Chapter 16. Rake was feeling a little out of his comfort zone. He had considered himself among the elite magic users. He was a tooth fairy, one of the few fairies that travelled to the Blue Realm where the humans lived. He knew how to make the special trans-realm portals to get there, and how to perform spells that would work on humans. That was in addition to the spells that the majority of fairies learned. He had thought that he was very well educated in the limits and possibilities of magic. However, Istaga was showing him that his understanding of magic was very limited, even juvenile compared to hers and the centuries she had practiced. Rake had been taught a little about fablins, but it was a touchy subject for many fairies, particularly the older fairies, who had grown up centuries ago when fablins were much rarer and usually hidden away. The lessons had been brief, lacking detail. Rake remembered being told that fablins tended to be born with an ability for both fairy and goblin magic, but it was usually very weak in both types, sometimes so weak that they could not entirely form even the most simple spell. Their inability to master the magic of one or sometimes both of their shared heritages often made fablins outcasts in both societies, but the teacher had hinted that, while fablins with only weak magical ability were more common, there were exceptions, even towards the other end of the scale entirely. The teacher had not said more, but Rake had pondered on that more than once. Had he been suggesting that in some cases fablins could be born with greater magical ability than either of their parents? Was he referring to someone like Istaga? Maybe even Istaga herself, considering how old she looks. Rake's thoughts were running away, and he forced himself to concentrate on the present. Istaga's home was an intriguing place. The trunk of the tree went through the centre of the main space, which was a grass-covered mound with doorways and some windows. The walls were a combination of mud and rock mixed with tree roots. The tree had clearly been convinced to do this using fairy magic, but interwoven with the tree roots were bricks in the style of some goblin works that Rake had seen pictures of. The stonework was incredible, to a level that could only have been achieved using goblin magic. Seeing the result of the two forms of magic, the two ways of life, being used together in such a way, was both beautiful and worrying. At Rake's initial glance he felt like the stone and brick was stunting the tree's growth, strangling its life. However, a closer look soon revealed how the tree's roots were complemented by the stone, even supported by it in many places.
"So, Ellie Melson, young Fliss here tells me that you seek a boy that has been taken into the service of Umkra," Istaga stated. "Your brother, I'm told, taken just days ago?"
The fablin sought confirmation of the details. Ellie nodded vigorously, and Rake marvelled once more at how she had been shrunken down to the same size as him. He was sure that goblin magic could not affect living things in that way, but fairy magic could not make things change size. To use both forms of magic together in such perfect harmony, Istaga must be a true master. But who had taught her? Rake thought. Istaga spoke carefully.
"You understand that your brother will be deep in goblin lands, probably near the Mokhtar Mountains. That is where Umkra's clan is from, his base of power. The main human training camps are near there."
Ellie was adamant and declared,
"Wherever he is, that is where I will go."
The fablin nodded.
"I will provide you a guide, one who knows the goblin lands and the goblin ways. But first you must spend 2 days here, and I will help you understand your magic."
At that, Ellie looked hesitant, and Rake could imagine the turmoil in her mind. She wanted to rescue her brother as soon as possible, but she did need to learn more about her magic, especially if she might need it during her rescue attempt. The girl nodded.
"I agree to that. I will be grateful for anything you can teach me."
Rake was impressed at Ellie's wisdom in accepting the offer, and Istaga's generosity in making it. If there was anyone in the world who might be able to help Ellie learn how to control her unusual magic, Istaga seemed likely to be the best bet. The elderly figure took on a thoughtful tone of voice.
"Your guide will do his best to help you find your brother, but I suspect it will not be as difficult as one might imagine. If your brother shares your blood, I suspect he will have a very strong destiny, working with fate to shape events around him, much as it does with you. You, Ellie, have the strongest destiny I have felt in a being since your ancestor, Merlin."
Rake couldn't help but laugh out loud at Istaga's suggestion that she had met Merlin. But then he saw the open-mouthed look of disbelief on Fliss's face, while Blake looked confused and Ellie wore a look of excitement. The girl asked,
Did you know Merlin?
Istaga smiled.
Know him? He was my nephew,
She answered.
which I suppose makes me some sort of great-great-great-aunt to you, Ellie.
Rake couldn't contain himself any more. But you can't be Merlin's aunt. That would make you more than 1,000 years old. A lot more. No fairy has ever lived for more than 1,000 years. Istaga raised an eyebrow at his outburst.
I think you will find that I am not a fairy, and it is rude to talk about a woman's age that way. But I can't blame you for that conclusion. It is very rare for a Fablin to live this long. I think I might be the only one. My brother, Merlin's father, lived only 400 years. Merlin, because of his human blood, lived less than 200 years. I was just a child, barely 20 when Merlin died. But even though I was so very young, and him so close to death and faded when I knew him, Merlin still had a powerful aura of destiny, as does Ellie, and I suspect her brother.
Rake wasn't sure what to make of this. Could she really be that old? Really be Merlin's aunt? Or is she insane, or just lying? Rake realized how little he knew about the elderly Fablin. A seed of distrust formed in him then, and he determined not to take everything the old woman said as truth, to help guide Ellie against any lies or insanities the Fablin might be delivering.